All right, welcome in, guys. I am your host, Jason Paglia, and today we're here to talk some UFC 252 with our special guest. You've seen him at a bunch of outlets, obviously, from the Fight Network to the Pat Mayo Experience and on and on. Rum Pure welcomes MMA analyst Cody Saftic to the show. What's going on, Cody?
Happy to be here, man. Good times. A nice little pay-per-view coming up, and always excited to talk fights. But yeah, you guys have an awesome little platform here, great little fan base, so I'm very happy to be on and interact.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. We're glad you're here. We're going to talk some UFC 252. As I said earlier, get your thoughts on the card. I know you're a fan of DFS and sports betting. Personally, that's how I make my living. I watch easily 20 to 25 hours of fight tape every week. I'm sure that's all you do is watch tape, I would assume, to get ready, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of tape study that goes involved, and just because there's so many cards every week, and if you're a guy that, like you're mentioning as well, if you want to do it full time, you got to go on Contender Series. You have to have the Bellator plays. You have to have PFL if they're offering it to you. Whatever edge you think you can gain, you're gaining. Yeah, a lot of it's tape study, but also you got to make sure you watch the fights to help cut down on that tape study. If you know these guys already, then at least it's going to cut down and saying, geez, I got to watch the last 5 fights, got to watch the last 6 fights. For me personally, if you're looking for tips on how to tape study, you just got to look for the stylistical clash. This guy's fighting a jiu-jitsu guy. Doesn't matter if you're watching him fight a Muay Thai striker. You got to watch him fight the jiu-jitsu guy. Even if the fight's 2-3 fights back, that's what you got to base it on. You just got to base on how every style performs in a certain spot. Chris Weidman last week, people talk about he's 1-6, 1-6, 1-6. 1-6 against world-class guys with great gas tanks, known to take people in deep water and have great striking. Omari Akhmedov, not that guy. So even though a 1-6 slide doesn't look good, the stylistical clash here favors him. 135 on the money line was a good play. Was it a greasy second round? Yes. But going into the third round, 1-1, that's where Weidman wanted to get this fight because Akhmedov just doesn't have that third round cardio. So, again, certain spots. And, yeah, man, I mean, we're fans of the sport. So we love watching the tape study. We love doing the research. But no doubt about it, there's definitely a lot of commitment that goes into it.
Yeah, and that's been one of the challenging things since the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I basically knew every fighter, 11 out of the 12 fights, but they have really been pulling some guys out of the woodwork because, the cards in Abu Dhabi, they were only allowed at times to have only international fighters. When we were in Jacksonville, it was only the fighters that were in the United States. So they really, really started to pull from the well. And I mean, probably 4 or 5 fighters per card that I had never seen before, that I had to pull all the regional tape that I would be able to pull just because there were a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I would say personally, I almost feel like it's almost helped me a little bit. If you look at the UFC as the UFC's reputation as the best martial arts in the world, has that always been the case? Maybe not, but some of the best guys fight in the UFC. So you're taping, we'll talk about it in a minute, you're taping Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. These are the best guys in the world. These guys got skills absolutely everywhere. Either guy is capable of defeating the other man because they're both world-class operators. When you get these lower-level guys, it's just like Contender Series, right? One of these guys is actually good, could be good. He's a legitimate prospect. The other guy's not that good, doesn't have the skills. So it's almost easier to find, debuting guy against debuting guy. One of them just not ready, just not at that caliber. Maybe too young, maybe too green, maybe doesn't have a certain skill set. Whereas the other guy, Jesse Ronson coming back, some of these guys are returning fighters. Some of these guys are guys that have been ready the entire time. They stayed in good shape. They have good skill sets. They're a little bit older. They come to the UFC. They're ready to roll. So, yeah, it's been an interesting spot. Back, let's say, last year, a couple of years ago, I always found the European cards were good spots to make money. The Brazilian cards that were a little lesser known. Pay-per-views, those lines get hit well, right? Guys are sharp to them, big known fights. The lines get steamed. Hard to find a good edge. You look at those European cards, some of the Brazilian cards, some of the fight nights that kind of floated under the radar, good lines, unknown fighters can get a good read on that. So I even minded those short notice guys, but it's like you're saying, when you're trying to do all this tape study, 20, 25 hours a week, and then there's another guy, geez, I never heard of him. So now I got to see, did he wrestle in high school? Did he wrestle in college?
Right.
What's his background? What's his family life like? What's his training situation? You go through all that. But there's nothing more frustrating than when you spend a couple hours tape studying a guy, the fight just falls off. The fight never happens. And that happens all the time, especially right now, right?
Yeah, 100%. It happens so much, man. All right, so let's start at the bottom. Early prelims, first fight on the card. Actually, a heavyweight fight. I think it's Chris Daukaus, Parker Porter. Personally, I have not watched the fight tape on either of these fighters yet. I watched Porter back in 2013 and 2015 on Bellator, but I have to watch some of the recent tape on the regionals first before I could really speak on the fight. I know he's got a bunch of submission wins. And on the flip side, he fights Chris Daukaus, who I think has a brother who also fights, I believe. Both guys seem to be relatively inexperienced. Daukaus has 11 fights, but, he appears to have heavy hands because 7 of his 8 wins are by knockout. Break it down for me, Cody. How do you see the fight going?
Yeah, so Daukaus is actually the older brother of Kyle Daukaus, just made his UFC debut against Brandon Allen. Didn't look too bad. He's 3 years the older. These guys seem like they got good cardio. They're pretty smooth on their feet. Decent grappling skills. I think they prefer to get the fight on the ground and grapple, but like you said, they're both kind of green, inexperienced. And I just don't think Daukaus has world-class experience at this level. He's 30 years old. He's now making his debut. It's a bit of a tough situation, but because it's quarantine times, he isn't jumping into the UFC and fighting a UFC heavyweight. He's taking on somebody that missed his chance to fight in the UFC a long time ago, and that's Parker Porter. Parker Porter, 35 years old, very late to be making your UFC debut. He's also 265 pounds, cuts to 265, and he's only 6 feet tall. He is all legs, baby. This guy is absolutely giant in the legs, generates a lot of power, but outside of that, he's very prone to just staying in one spot and getting chipped away from the outside. That's kind of how I think Daukaus' path to victory. For Parker Porter, keep in mind here, Parker Porter fought John Jones in 2008. John Jones was 20 years old at the time. Parker Porter was 23. Parker Porter then fought Gabe Gonzaga in 2011. Parker Porter was 26 years old. Parker Porter now makes his UFC debut. He's 35 years old. What happened in all that time? I'll tell you what, Parker Porter just wasn't fighting in the sport. He wasn't competing. He wasn't active. And now when you see him, he's fighting low-end talent on the East Coast regional scene. He looks okay. He's got some good power, but he needs to get you in the second and third round. That's kind of where he gets the big power off. So I think Daukaus is able to control him early. Daukaus has been caught before. As long as he avoids that shot, I think he should be able to win. And more importantly, I think that the over 1.5 is close to even money on this fight. I'm looking at it over. I know a lot of people have a tendency, heavyweight fight. One guy's 265. Sure. One guy's 255. Both guys like to finish. I got the impression that they're both lower-level heavyweights, maybe draw themselves out a little bit. If a finish happens a little bit later. So I'm looking to hit at least an over 1.5, and then Daukaus would be the official lean on that one.
Yeah, Daukaus currently the dog at plus 104. Plus over 1.5, I would assume, has to be close to dog money too, right?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking about how they just figured, geez, Parker Porter, he's an early finisher, but Parker Porter finishes in the second and third round. I got Daukaus winning, so I think Daukaus is going to take him into that second and third round, chip away at him, beat him, not get finished. Even if he does get caught by that punch, it probably happens in over 2 rounds. Probably, I would say even bet or fight to complete 2 rounds or fight to start round 3, also decent looks as well. Because, again, you have this idea of 2 debuting heavyweights. They have finishes on their record. They have been finished, and they've finished opponents. Probably going to get sloppy, probably going to take each other out. But they're not exactly the most aggressive, especially Daukaus. Daukaus likes to take his time. Daukaus likes to stand on the outside. Meanwhile, he's 6'2", 255. That extra 2 inches, it's going to allow him to be the taller man, the longer man, the rangier man. He's just got to fight the smart game plan, stay on the outside. But Parker Porter, unless he just rushes him and closes that distance right away, which you might, UFC debut, 35 years old, nothing to lose. But I think Daukaus is a little more experienced, a little more conservative, and has a better ground game as well. So if he does manage to get big old Parker Porter to the ground, he should be able to control and neutralize any game that he has off his back. I
like it. All right, first fight on the ESPN prelims. Bit of a smaller card here, huh? Only 10-fight card. Normally we get 12, sometimes 13. But this is the first fight on the ESPN prelims. Women's strawweight fight between Ashley Yoder, Libya Renata Souza. Ashley Yoder, we know, has been around the UFC for a couple years now. Started with the UFC on The Ultimate Fighter. She was eliminated from the show. She never really made any noise at all. The UFC ends up giving her a shot anyway. Since UFC 222, she's 2-2 in her last 4 fights. She dropped the fight against Mackenzie Dern, I believe, and Ronda Marcos. She did beat another Ultimate Fighter female in Amanda Cooper. And her last win, I believe, was against Kondo. And we know what Ashley Yoder is, right? Personally, she's shown some flashes of a pretty competent striking game at times. My issue with her is she has never been really consistent. She's never stopped anybody unless it's been with an arm bar. All her fights are pretty much close split decisions, even though she's been able to find some arm bars in the cage before. but never really since joining the UFC. Now, on the flip side, Souza seems to be in a different class, in my opinion. A legitimate ground game. I believe she's got a black belt in BJJ. I watched her in a few rolling tournaments, and she appears to be a rock-solid grappler, man. She's only had 3 fights in the UFC, I believe. She grabs 2 out of 3 there. As far as her striking game, I was actually impressed with her striking game and her toughness against Van Buren, who hits like a truck. We know she throws with bad intentions, and I thought that Souza really matched her intensity and threw some hard strikes. Unfortunately, with raw fighters, when they throw with bad intentions, the technique usually goes out the window, and I think that was the case with her. I'm intrigued by the fight, though, and excited to see what you think about the fight. How does it play out for you?
It's definitely living on Souza's fight to lose. I mean, she is a very competent, very aggressive, and a very well-trained fighter when she's at her best. I just find it hard to gauge when is she going to be at her best. When she was in Invicta, she was a world champion. She just buzzed. Not only is she a BJJ black belt, she's also a judo black belt and has some nasty striking. Great body kick, great left hand, sets it up well. Was fighting 5 rounds in Invicta. Cardio never seemed to be an issue. Comes to the UFC. She's a minus 1350. You heard that correctly. 1350 in her UFC debut against Alex Chambers, and looks great and gets the first round submission. This is a girl that sky's the limit for. Lots of potential here. The Sarah Frauda fight, Frauda missed weight bad. Was way bigger than Livian Souza. But one issue I did have in that fight with Souza is that she just didn't throw a whole lot. 20 significant strikes, relied mostly on just trying to get Frauda to the ground and neutralize her. I understood because Frauda was bigger, the weight miss. Maybe you didn't want to stand and strike there with such a bigger, competent striker. I get it. Used the wrestling a little bit. Not bad. Not a great performance, but got the win. I was happy with that. It's the Van Buren fight where, geez, she just doesn't mix anything together. The wrestling, it's not there. The striking, again, it's a 20%, a 20 significant strikes per fight output. It's just not quite enough. She seems to be a little bit tentative. And that's the one issue I have with her is that she doesn't seem overly big for the weight class. And I feel like aggressive fighters that are coming forward on her maybe be the key to defeating her. If you look at why she looks so good in Invicta, people don't want to engage at this girl. They're backing up. She's moving forward. She's getting aggressive. She's fighting into her rhythm. If there's one thing that I will give Yoder, 7-5 record, not very pretty. Run on the Ultimate Fighter, wasn't great. Run in the UFC so far, not great. This girl's a fighter, man. And she's a gritty fighter. She likes to wrestle. She likes to grapple. That would serve her the best in this fight. Yeah, she can strike a little bit, but just strike long enough so the judges see, hey, I'm working. I'm throwing a little bit of volume. I'm doing, but then try to get this girl to the ground. I know it's going to be difficult. She's got the judo pedigree. She's got the black belt pedigree. But again, actually, Yoder is a grappler. This is a girl that's competed at the Worlds in jiu-jitsu. She's had a Dan Henderson's gym, spent a lot of time with Dan Henderson and crew out of there in Temecula, California. She knows how to wrestle. She knows how to be grindy. Her last fight against Ronda Marcos, hey, who's more tough and grindy than Ronda Marcos, right? She completes 2 takedowns on Marcos and unfortunately loses a split decision. But fighting that type of game plan would serve her well in a spot like this over Souza. So traditionally, I've been very big on Livian Souza because she has all the skills. But I can't deny the fact that her last 2 fights, she's 1-1. Her last 2 fights, she hasn't looked great, and it seems like Yoder presents some of the problems that she's been dealing with. So I will have Souza, but just ever so slightly. I don't want to fall myself into looking at, geez, minus 160. Feels too good to be true. Maybe it is too good to be true. So I'd like Souza to come out here, look good, get some confidence for me back into her. And again, I think the over is probably the way to go, but you're not going to get a great price tag on that, so why bother?
Yeah, I that was my first thought too. I thought the line on Souza was a little short. I thought there was some value. I know the line opened up at minus 155. 5 Dimes currently hangs minus 165. But I think even around that number, there does seem to still be value in that number on Souza. You would agree?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the first thing when I'm looking at lines. It's like, which one, if I was capping it, which one would I don't agree with this one. And right away, it's just like, man, why is Souza that big of a like, not, it's a minus 160. It's just very reasonable. Like you said, open up at minus 155. And I think part of that is you watch how Van Buren dismantles her. 30-27, beats her pillar to post, very clean. Well, that must mean Van Buren's a very special talent. Then Van Buren goes out and gets beat pillar to post, very clean, 30-27 to Tecia Torres. Now it makes you think, geez, Livian Souza couldn't even hang with Van Buren, who's not at the level of a Tecia Torres. Like, there's level, you know when they say, oh, there's levels to this game. Ticia's top 5 in the world, top 10 in the world. She's right at the top. Van Buren, turns out she's still a little bit green. She's that mid-level. Souza couldn't hang with a mid-level fighter. She got blown out by a mid-level fighter. Her other wins in the UFC, both girls have been released from the UFC. They're no longer with the promotion. How good is she really? That's why this is a good barometer test, because Ashley Yoder, she's a 50-50 fighter, but she gives a good account of herself. She gives you rounds. She'll test you a little bit. She'll test your mettle. So it's an interesting growing experience for Souza. At minus 160, again, just doesn't look that bad. But I think part of that is who has she been fighting, who has she been looking good against, whereas at least Yoder's fighting against top competition. So the pick of Souza, I agree with you. I feel like 160 is good value. I think because I have the fight go the distance and Yoder is very cast iron, I would have Souza by decision to get some additional value on that. But don't feel totally confident about it. Not as much as I usually do with Souza, because the one upon a time she was my girl. I mean, she was an ATM printing out money. I know it's just just lost one fight. No big deal. The writing is kind of on the wall where like there's some holes to her game that'll get exploited at the higher levels. Is Yoder at this highest level? I don't know. But we will find out on Saturday.
Yeah, man, I think you're spot on. I agree with that completely. And I normally look, if I'm going to take a fighter, unless they are, special in women's MMA, I always take a decision because I would think 8 of every 10 fights probably goes to the cards, right? So I definitely agree with you there. Next up, featherweight fight between TJ Brown and I believe it's Danny Chavez, right? Yeah. TJ Brown, only one fight in the UFC, I believe. Recently lost to Jordan Griffin. I know that he has fought at 155 before, but I think he's at 145 if in this fight. One thing you can guarantee with TJ Brown is a lot of action, man. He starts fast. He comes out super aggressive. So much so that, he sends the illegal knee to the head of Lockhart on the Contender Series. Nevertheless, I like his hands. His footwork in the cage seems to be solid. He's got a decent double leg takedown, and he's clearly versed on the ground with the amount of subs that he has been able to get off in the cage. I've seen him get dropped a few times, though. So as far as his opponent, I could not find any tape on the regional scene except for his fights in 2016. So I know the only fight he's had in the last 2 years was against Kala in Global Legion, but I couldn't find any tape on him in that fight either. So that's probably the only fight that would matter considering the long layoff, how he looks recently. Have you been able to analyze Chavez yet? And how do you see this fight going on?
Yeah, you know what? Chavez really not that bad. I think if you're looking for a live underdog, this guy certainly got some wild card appeal to him. I mean, 33 years old, Colombian guy, and he's just largely floated under the radar. So I think coming into this spot, it's like, geez, I like TJ Brown. TJ Brown scored 8 takedowns in his UC debut, and he was looking real good against Jordan Griffin, and he just got caught. There's a lot to like there with TJ Brown, but Chavez just brings in these variables that he's a big power puncher, and because there's this long layoff and most people haven't been able to see a lot of his recent body of work, they just don't know what they're getting themselves into. So they're backing TJ Brown based on seeing his last fight, but fading Danny Chavez based on not being able to see his last fight. So I had to go all the way to Instagram to find his last fight because it's a paywall. Really? Yeah, you got to pay to watch the fight. I was like, you know what? I tape study so many fights that there's a lot of stuff behind paywalls. I can't be in the business of paying to watch a 15-minute fight, right? So anyway, somebody filmed it from the crowd on Instagram. You get a pretty good view of it, to be honest with you. And Chavez, he moves forward. He's got heavy hands. One thing that I think is really notable on him is he starts off his career. He looks good. He's banging out. He's banging it on the feet. He's knocking guys out. He's actually fought 5 rounds twice in his career. First time wins, title fight, gone 5 rounds. Cardio didn't look bad. Second fight is his first pro loss against Jason Soares. He gets caught with a guillotine in the 5th round. His next fight is his second pro loss against Adi Alic. He loses a unanimous decision. He takes 2 years off after this, fights twice, takes another 2 years off, and then has that last fight with Kala. So that's why people are, oh, geez, when he lost 2, then he took years off from the sport. According to him, he says, I lost my 2 fights because I couldn't wrestle. And I took that time off just to wrestle. And all I did was wrestle. And according to him, I doubt this is the case, but he's like, Habib wouldn't take me down now. All I did was wrestle during that time. And he's got very, very, very heavy hands. So my concern here is that with TJ Brown's going to go out there. He's going to look to get the takedowns. Issue with him getting the takedowns is even though he can secure the takedown, he doesn't have great top pressure, not great top control. His opponents are easily able to bounce, get back up. That's why Griffin is able to just threaten the guillotine and get up so many times, which requires TJ Brown to chase him down so many times. With TJ Brown, he's a killer be killed fighter. He likes to go out there and get that finish. Either he's finishing you but we're finishing him. And that doesn't just go back to the Jordan Griffin fight. I mean, you look at his career, Cody Carrillo, 13-16. That's his record. 13 wins, 16 losses. He knocks out TJ Brown in the first round. You've got Bobby Taylor. He was 3 wins, 6 losses. He knocked him out in the first round as well. Minute 56 in the first round. The other guys are submitting him. Trey Ogden submitted him in the first round, and Joey Miola submitted him in the second round. He pushes such an incredible pace on you to try to finish you that when it doesn't happen, he leaves a lot of opportunities to he himself be finished. And I think that's the issue with Chavez. Chavez has been finished once in his career. It was in the 5th round by a guillotine choke. If TJ Brown comes out here and puts the pressure on him early, gets him down a few times, but Chavez just works his way back up, second round starts, Chavez not all that tired, he's going to land one of those shots at some point. 2 guys with sub 500 records, considered journeyman, not even considered journeyman, regional show can talent, have been able to knock out TJ Brown within 3 minutes. Both of them within 3 minutes. Chin's not great. And now he's taking on a guy in Chavez who's knocked out his last 3 opponents in the first round. Power's very good. It comes down to that wrestling. We know TJ Brown can wrestle. That's why we're betting TJ Brown. We don't know that Chavez can wrestle because we haven't seen the tape, because we haven't seen him. I'm going to bet that this guy has worked on his wrestling. I'm going to bet that he does stuff a few shots. And if he does stuff a few shots, he could land that moneymaker. So if you're looking for DFS, you're looking for DraftKings, Chavez is very low priced on DraftKings and got very high upside. If he gets the win, he gets the first round knockout. He is a proven finisher, and TJ Brown has been finished. I mean, writing's on the wall. As far as the money line goes, he's the underdog. So if you're a dog play kind of guy, you could go with that. You would probably look at him inside the distance as well, just because TJ Brown not really want to go the distance. But yeah, as much as I do like TJ Brown, and I think he's got a lot of upside for himself, and he's a very fun and entertaining fighter, this is bad news written on it. This is a very potentially bad situation for him because Chavez he's unknown. A lot of people are not giving him his credit because they just don't really know who he is, but they'll find out on Saturday.
I like the DFS perspective because a lot of our guys that watch this show also play in those DFS tournaments. So that's a good tip right there for that fight. Women's strawweight fight between Felice Herrig and Vera Jandiroba. The line in this fight is pretty substantial. Jandiroba minus 330 favorite over Herrig. And I understand why the book has made her the favorite. She does appear to be a cut above Herrig. She has excellent Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She has great takedowns. Her stand-up game, I think, probably leaves a little to be desired. As far as Felice Herrig, also, we know what she's about after all this time in the UFC. I didn't actually remember that she hadn't fought since 2018. I don't know why I thought she fought in 2019, but I was wrong. Herrig did string some nice wins together a couple of years ago, but she has lost back-to-back fights against Karate Hottie and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So Felice striker with some good towel control, okay grappling. Everybody forgets that Herrig had a very nice Muay Thai career before she entered the UFC. So is this line too inflated for you on Jandiroba, or does it make sense to you, Cody?
You know what? I'm glad you brought up Herrig's kickboxing career because, yeah, people just don't talk about that whatsoever. And that would be your key here, is that she can wrestle. She can grapple. She's under Jeff Curran out of Crystal Lake, Illinois, someone who's very competent. She's a veteran of the sport. She's grappled against some of the higher level fighters and lived to tell the tale, not someone that's getting finished. And if she can keep this fight standing, stuff some of those takedowns, survive some of those grappling exchanges, and get back to her feet, she would be considered to have a significant striking advantage over Jandiroba, who's just more of a one-dimensional grappler. So I feel that Felice Herrig is live in those situations. But yeah, the 2-year-long layoff, and not only that, 2-year-long layoff because of a torn ACL. So if you know Felice Herrig, right, she's just someone who's just like a workaholic, just always in the gym, always working hard, always in tremendous shape. Blows out her knee now at 33 years old. That's just a lifetime of wear and tear, a lifetime of working hard. Not only does she's got like, I think her record was like 33-4 in kickboxing. And then as far as MMA goes, you know, she's competed a number of times. She's on The Ultimate Fighter. She competed there. She's competed for Bellator. She's competed for the UFC. She's been all over. 33 years old, the knee finally gives out. Now returning 2-year-long layoff at 35 years old. You just get the feel of like maybe the division's passing her by a little bit. She was red hot a few years ago. Like you said, cash and dog tickets over fighters like Alexa Grasso, but using that veteran savvy shit that she had developed over the years to show these young up-and-comers a thing or two. When they mashed her up against that upper echelon, you got 2 former title challengers in Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Michelle Waterson. Then it just couldn't quite get over the hump. Now with Jandiroba, it's like, you know what? She is bigger. She is stronger. She's a little more physical. She just wants to get the fight to the ground. Once she gets the fight to the ground, she'll be able to out grapple Felice Herrig. But the line is just too big. -300, -310 some spots. I don't like it. I think Felice Herrig is very durable. Again, she's a good grappler, good wrestler. I think that she'll be able to survive. So if I like Jandiroba, I like Jandiroba by decision. But again, not a great price there. I think you're improving it to, I think, to the tune of -240 in some spots. But it's still a big enough price tag. So I don't want to force any spots. Jandiroba hasn't looked particularly great in the UFC.
Right.
She seems to have the physical tools to get the job done here. But you don't want to bank up on somebody at 3-1 who just hasn't really proven themselves to you yet. And she does have a way to do that. Beating Felice is a great step, but we have to see a little bit more from her before we start betting her at 3-1 over a proven commodity. And it's not the same matchup whatsoever. But going back to a few weeks ago with Edmund Shabazian, geez, he's 22 years old. He looks rock solid. The striking looks awesome. Everybody likes this guy. And Brunson's 36. Brunson's a little over, but Brunson knows a thing or two, right? Brunson can show you a thing or two. Jandiroba is not a 22-year-old prospect that we don't know nothing about. But because she hasn't fought at the elite level long enough, there's still some question marks regarding her. And question marks that I don't want to try to find out at the sum of 3-1. So it'll probably be a pass to me, or if I'm going to take Jandiroba, it'll be by decision.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and that's what I had forgotten. I remembered last night that Felice Herrig blew out the knee, and that's why we hadn't seen her in a couple years. But yeah, I agree, man. You know, Jandiroba has not looked great so far in the UFC. Really hard to lay -$3 on somebody that hasn't been stellar so far in the UFC. So, all right, feature prelim fight. Vince Pichel and my guy from Sparta, New Jersey, the ageless Jimmy Miller. Man, I am really happy for Jim Miller. A couple years of his career basically robbed from him because of Lyme disease. Luckily for him, now he does have it under control, and it has shown. He's won 3 of his last 4 in the cage. The problem is the level of competition has been really poor. You can't even count the Guida fight because Clay shouldn't even be in the cage anymore, right? Miller, he has stuck with what brought him to the dance, man. He's got a really good grappling game. In his last 4 fights, 3 submission victories, 2 of which came in the first round. His striking game, was never anything incredible. Because I never thought his hand speed was exceptional, but he'll bang in the pocket with the best of them to get closer for takedown attempts. So Miller obviously fighting Pichel. I watched tape on Pichel, and I think that if he can survive the first round while Miller is fresh and submission hunting, he's probably stands a solid chance of taking the fight over in rounds 2 and 3. If I had to guess, extremely active kid in the cage, and it'll certainly help him edge rounds at the first sight of Miller tiring. So he's not the most technical fighter by any means, and he still needs a lot of work, but it wouldn't shock me if he lost the first round and then ends up edging the latter rounds if Miller slows down. How do you see this fight going?
Yeah, I actually agree with you 100% on there. Jim Miller is still a viable threat in the first 5 minutes. He comes out, he knows what he's got to do. He's got decent hands. I mean, he's a combination puncher now, and he's just got to box for a few minutes, but then he's got to get that takedown. If he stands there and he boxes for 4 or 5 minutes, eventually he starts to get touched up. As he gets touched up, he just doesn't wear damage particularly well anymore at age 36. The Scott Holtzman fight's a great example. I thought he looked good early against Holtzman. He's landing combinations. He's landing the better punches, good punch selection. But Jim Miller's not really a power puncher. And therein lies the problem with taking on a big, aggressive, strong opponent, is that if you don't gain their respect early with those punches, they start to disrespect. They just start to move forward. Maybe that's his key, to just get the takedown. Now that he's moving forward, he's being reckless. I get the takedown. Jim Miller's got a rear naked choke like you would not believe. Guys, very strong. Remember way back in the day, he'd have videos where he's like squatting 600 pounds? Jim Miller is a very, very strong individual. He could still be a very big threat if he gets on top of you, but it's surviving that early portion. And I think that's what Vince Pichel is going to be able to do. It's crazy to think that Vince Pichel is actually a year older than Jim Miller when you consider Miller has been fighting at the highest level for absolutely ever. I mean, he was like 4-0. He's fighting in the IFL, which was the premier organization outside of the UFC at the time, then comes to the UFC and has had a great run since then. Injuries have plagued him. Lyme disease has plagued him, but he still carries on through. He's a fighter at heart. He knows how to get the job done. But he's just got that one round, and that's my problem. Is I don't think Pichel is going to crumple up in one round. Pichel has had a crazy story, man. I mean, the guy goes on a run until 2014 and then takes 3 years off from the sport. During those 3 years off from the sport, he had broke his orbital bone, so he had limited vision and blurriness in the eye. He tore his labrum. He tore his bicep. He's gotten a big feud with the insurance company about taking care of him because he was working at a tow truck place. He gets in a big lawsuit with them, and then his fiance leaves him. Oh my God, talk about a bad run of luck. And then when he does come back to the UFC, it's he's never skipped a beat. It's the guy this is probably his outlet. He fights once a year, once every 2 years sometimes, and this is his outlet. And when he gets in there, he's not the most technical guy going, but it's he's a junkyard dog, man. He wants to fight. He's going to get in there and he's going to exchange with you. He's got decent power. He's got decent wrestling. He's hard to take down. He's a big, strong guy. And I think that's where Miller's going to have problems with him. I think Miller in the first round probably beats him in the stand-up, beats him long enough in the stand-up, maybe gets the takedown, wins the first round. In the second or the third round, as Jim starts to tire, as we've kind of seen from him, starts to tire a little bit, that's when Pichel's going to come on. Pichel comes on strong in rounds 2 and 3, edges those out, he gets the win. I think if you're looking at this on a betting perspective, I'm looking at small action against Pichel. I'm looking at small action on the fight to get some rounds in because Miller's such a notorious first-round finisher. A lot of people think, oh, this fight's done in the first round or Miller's done. But look back at the Holtzman fight. Once he flops out in the first round, he's still tough enough to hang with guys that aren't sharp killers, that aren't Charles Oliveira, right? He can still hang with those guys for some rounds. Pichel's the same way. He's more of a decision guy. So I can see this going 2 rounds. I can see it going 3 rounds. I can see it even going the decision, whereas that's probably not the popular opinion. I can think Pichel gets some rounds in. I would also think, depending on what book you're using, you can live bet. And this would be a good fight to live bet because if Jim Miller comes out there and looks really good in the first round, and then he's getting tired, but he wins the first round, you're going to get a really good live bet price on Vince Pichel. And the flip side to that is if Jim Miller goes out there and runs right through Vince Pichel, you don't got to worry about it. You didn't bet on Vince Pichel. You thought the fight's over, right? But you could see, is this guy caring? And then my last point is that Jim Miller made an interview yesterday where he's talking about, you know what, cardio issues have been plaguing me. Guys say this all the time. Hey, cardio's been my problem. But they always follow it up with, so I've been working on it. No, not Jim. He was like, cardio's been my problem. So finish this guy in the first. It's I don't know. That's what I wanted to hear. But I think Pichel survives the first, comes back, takes 2 and 3, and ends up securing the victory.
I agree completely. Seems like a live betting type of fight for me personally. We kick the main card off. Starts with a solid bantamweight fight, man. Former title contender John Dodson against Merab Dvalishvili. We recently saw Dvalishvili. He comes in off that dominant performance in June when he fought the Combate star Gustavo Lopez. And it was about as strong a wrestling performance that I've seen in a while, man. I mean, there was an endless amount of double leg takedowns in that fight by Dvalishvili. He fights out of Serra-Longo. While Dvalishvili doesn't impress me on the feet, you know, he's dominant on the mat, takes on a former top 10 staple in John Dodson. For years, Dodson was a legitimate title contender, man, but he just never got over the hump. And it's a tough fight for me to judge because if you take a quick look at what Dodson has done the last few years, it looks like he has lost 4 of his last 7 fights, right? Now, that's pretty bad, but if you look at the fighters that have beat him, it is like murderer's row, man. He's lost to new champion Petr Yan. He dropped one to Jimmy Rivera, Marlon Moraes, John Lineker, who hits as hard as anybody does, pound for pound. So, you know, Dvalishvili isn't as good as any of those fighters, in my opinion. Historically, it's been really hard to take John Dodson because he's so low to the ground. It's hard to take him down. So, you know, my question for you is, if Dvalishvili cannot get the fight to the ground, does he win this fight anyway?
Yeah, you know what? I a couple days ago, I'm thinking about, you know what? Dvalishvili's just so big. He's just so strong. John Dodson, a former flyweight, he's just not going to be able to do with the physicality of Dvalishvili, who will eventually just get him up against the cage and try to get takedowns and succeed on some of them, not succeed, but eventually just control the action, control the pace, get the decision. I'm getting cold feet on him, man, because John Dodson's most definitely a live dog here. It's not only did you mention it, it's hard to take him down. It is. He's low to the ground. He's only like 5'4". He packs a lot of power for his size. He's very fast. You got to track him down, then get a hold of him, then take him down. Above that, he's very hard to hold down. I think that's going to be the key here. Gustavo Lopez is not John Dodson. Gustavo Lopez is not near the level of John Dodson, never has been, never will be. Gustavo Lopez was taken down 13 times. It seems impressive. Oh, man, 13 takedowns. What's not impressive there is that this man got up 12 times, right? This man was able to get up when he needed to. If you look at Dvalishvili, that's kind of his whole career. He takes down numerous guys. His fight with Frankie Saenz, he took him down 13 times. This is what he does. He completes takedowns, but he doesn't necessarily hold his opponent down. When his opponent gets back up, they generally do outstrike him till he gets the next takedown. Cardio looks good, but because he muscles all these takedowns, he's not a clean D1 All-American, he's gonna chain wrestle you. He will chain wrestle you with muscle techniques. Outside trip, inside trip, double leg, single leg, get you in the cage, push, peel, suck your hips out, put you on the ground. He just keeps working you, but it's a very exhausting pace. And I find as the fight goes on, he just gets sloppier and sloppier. If Dodson gets him into those later rounds, sloppier and sloppier, starts stuffing these takedowns, Dodson's got legitimate power. And Dvalishvili has never been knocked out. So it's very difficult to say, well, Dodson's going to catch him in those later rounds. But the theory here for me is that Dodson's going to make him work. He is the best opponent, as you mentioned. He's the best opponent that Dvalishvili's fought on the basis of look at all the guys that he's fought. And not only is he losing to the guys like Marlon Moraes, he thought he got robbed. This is a close fight, man. He's in there with world-class competition. Yes. Whereas Dvalishvili is unanimous decisioning and scoring 13 takedowns over a Combate Americas veteran who took the fight on 2 days' notice. So, again, goes back to that theory that there's levels to this. Dvalishvili has looked almost unbeatable against that lower level. And now he's not jumping to mid-level, he's jumping to high level because Dodson has proven to be a tough competitor. And Dodson also does have the skills. He's got the wrestling, he's got the get-up ability, he's got the power, and above all else, he's fast. So Dvalishvili is going to have to chase him around the octagon because you've watched enough John Dodson fights to know the guy is not a runner, but he's almost a runner. He hits you and then he's gone. He doesn't stay there a whole long. So he's going to present a very interesting style clash for Dvalishvili. I think Dvalishvili right now is minus 230. That seems a bit of a steep price tag. Of course, you would take him by decision because he beats everybody by decision, and Dodson's very durable. So if you're picking against Dodson, surely you don't think he's getting knocked out or submitted. You would take that decision prop, but I was on Dodson last time out against Wood. Geez, the kid's young and he leaves opening and he's hittable. You don't want to be hittable against Dodson because that guy carries a lot of power. Underrated power, really. It was great at 125. You don't see it as much as 135, but it is there. Dvalishvili leaves those same openings. He leaves his hands down. He gets tired. He plods forward just to get a hold of you. Don't want to be making mistakes against a good counter puncher like Dodson. So the closer that we get to this fight, the more I'm overthinking it and the more I should probably just pass. Because betting Dodson as the underdog, which is kind of what I'm feeling like I'd like to do, will just blow up in my face. He won't do enough. I'll scream at my TV. I'll be super upset he's being inactive because he's got a tendency to do that as well. And if I take Dvalishvili and I jump on the bandwagon, it's going to be a sweat because, again, I don't think he's as good as we're making him out to be. He needs to just continue to fight better guys, prove himself, gain that experience, get chin checked, get out of submissions, get tired, do all these things, prove you can do all these things. Whereas Dodson has. We have a much better read on him, right?
Yeah, when you say to me, John Dodson has power, and then you say that Dvalishvili is great at taking you down, but he has a hard time of staying there. What that screams to me is we're going to see a bunch of scrambles where John Dodson is going to have an opportunity in one of those scrambles to lay a punch that could matter, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He'll have the opportunities.
Yeah. Interesting fight, man. I as dominant as Dvalishvili was, I don't know if I can lay 240 right now. I don't know if I can do it, man. All right, featherweight fight between Herbert Burns, Daniel Pineda. I mean, Jesus, what can you say about the Burns brothers over the last year, man? They've taken the UFC by storm. Incredibly impressive brothers. We know that Gilbert Burns has the potential to be a world champion. He will eventually fight for the title. I know, obviously, he didn't get the opportunity because of COVID. But his other brother has also been impressive, man. The problem for Burns is if you can attack anything that he's done over the last year, it would be his level of competition. Evan Dunham and Nate Landwehr doesn't really impress me at all. However, we know what Burns is, much like his brother, an extremely underrated striking game, a world-class ground game. I like his stand-up. I mean, it's not elite, but his footwork is great. He cuts solid angles in the cage that help his counter striking and spades. And he uses his limbs really well. His cardio seems awesome. He can submit you if you give him the smallest of openings from anywhere. Now, his opponent, Daniel Pineda, I still have to watch some tape on Pineda tonight. I know that he was fighting in the PFL, but I was only able to find like one highlight from his time in the PFL. So I know he's been everywhere, UFC, PFL, Bellator, Elite FC, and on and on. He would have to come into this fight, I believe, a winner of 6 straight, but his last 2 fights were taken away when he popped for a banned substance. I remember watching him back in 2012 in the UFC when he fought Diego Brandao. I mean, that's a long time ago, man. I know he also has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but, I really want to refamiliarize myself with the style tonight before I really speak on it. So Herbert Burns, big favorite here. Do you think it's justified? Does he get the job done?
You know what? As much as I'm not the biggest Herbert Burns fan, I'm a huge Gilbert Burns fan, not the biggest Herbert Burns guy. Yeah, I mean, it's justified. He's the big favorite. He's got the tools to beat Pineda. Pineda is an all-action man. 26 career wins, all of them by finish. Literally a 100% finish ratio through 26 pro fights. 8 knockouts, 18 submissions. As you mentioned, BJJ black belt. The guy is kill or be killed. That's what he's there for. He's an entertainer. When he's in the UFC the first go around, I think he had a 2-4 record. Fought some decent guys. Didn't get the benefit of the doubt in a few spots. Gets cut. And since then, his regional scene career has just been entertainment. I mean, the guy is hell on wheels. He just goes for it. Very entertaining. When he signs with PFL, he's a non-factor in this tournament. But he goes and he draws tournament favorite in his first fight. He's a plus 500 underdog. And he knocks this man out in 30 seconds. Then he goes out against Jeremy Kennedy. Shout out to BC's Jeremy Kennedy, my boy. I mean, top-ranked Canadian featherweight, UFC veteran, very durable. Guy fought Alexander Volkanovski. And the same thing, Pineda goes and submits him in the first round, 4 minutes in. He wins those fights in the same night. Now he just aligned himself to fight for the $1 million tournament final, and he gets popped. And now both those fights are no contest. The 2 biggest wins of his career just got erased. He's 35 years old. $1 million opportunity off the table. It's like, man, what a bad beat for this guy. So to see him get signed by the UFC, it's nice. It's nice. He's getting an opportunity to showcase his skills. And there's no doubt he'll try to go and put it on the line. But Herbert Burns never been finished. So this game plan of just going out and kill or be killed, how you going to finish Herbert Burns? You're going to knock him out? That's your best path because he's never been knocked out. You're going to submit him? You're a black belt. You've got 18 career wins by submission. You're not submitting Herbert Burns. Take that off the table right now. So how do you defeat him? You need to grind this guy and pick up a decision. It's like that's something that Pineda's never done in his career. He's never won a decision. Why would we believe that he's able to do it now? The other thing is with Herbert Burns, again, not a huge fan of his UFC debut. I'm going to fade his ass because I'm a Nate Landwehr guy. I like Nate the Train Landwehr. And one thing about Nate the Train, even though he's really wild and this and that, he's a character, he's got a great chin, man. If anything, Herbert Burns is not going to knock him out. But what does he do? He just throws the knee up right in the middle and knocks him out. Okay, now we got Evan Dunham. Evan Dunham's soft to the body. But Herbert Burns is not going to knock out Evan Dunham. And, geez, Evan Dunham, he's also a BJJ black belt. But, I mean, he just takes his back and he chokes him out like nothing. He can knock out guys he shouldn't be knocking out. He can submit guys maybe he shouldn't be submitting. The guy can kind of do it all. And the last thing here is that his striking has improved so much since his ONE FC days. It's like, oh, man, this guy's obviously spent a lot of time in his striking. When you're so good on the ground, your striking will make big improvements because you're no longer worried about being taken down. If he catches a kick and I fall to my back, who cares? Let him come to my guard. If he wants to drop under my punches and maybe shoot a double leg on me, who cares? Let him take me down. Once you get that confidence, you can just start throwing caution to the wind standing. And that's what I'm starting to see from him. As far as the stand-up goes, he's improving. He's a lot tighter, and he's got more of a willingness to throw. But that's all just designed to eventually get a hold of you, eventually get you to the ground, and when you do, submit the guy. Pineda's got a lot of tools to give Herbert Burns a lot of fits here. But ultimately, it's world-class against, mid-level, I should say. And at some point, Herbert Burns is probably going to get his hands around him, get him to the ground. And when he does, that's when you'll see him shine. Probably Herbert Burns' decision win. I'm not going to go heavy on it myself because, again, I actually faded him in his first 2 UFC fights. He's come out and he's proved me wrong. If I jump on the bandwagon now, he's going to prove me right what the thought I had beforehand is he's not his brother. But similar to his brother, got to give Gilbert credit. Gilbert wasn't always world-class either. Gilbert made a lot of improvements. Gilbert was a 155-pound mid-ranked guy, top 15 at best, and now he's a number 1 or 2 contender at 170 pounds. That's hard work. That's dedication. That's the drive to compete, the drive to succeed. Herbert's got that too, but he's gonna have to build into it, and he's older as well. I don't know that he's got the time. I think he wins this fight. I don't love the line. I think Pineda, could surprise a few people, but Herbert Burns has never been finished, and that's Pineda's key to victory is finishing guys, and I just don't think that's going to play out in this instance. So Herbert Burns would be my pick there.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. So last 3 fights on the card. Kick it off with a heavyweight fight. I've really been looking forward to this, man, since they announced it. Junior Dos Santos, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, JDS, man, he looks like he is in the best shape that I've ever seen him by a mile. He's legitimately ripped. Now, that said, he still has a chin that's been touched and cracked a lot, right? For a long time, JDS, I would say personally, probably had the best pocket boxing in the heavyweight division. I do think, though, that changed hands when Stipe started proving who he was. In my mind, he has the best boxing game in the pocket, probably in the division now. So his opponents is Rozenstruik. Listen, man, while he has gone 1-1 in his last 2 fights, he should have gone 0-2. That last second win against Alistair Overeem in a fight where he was completely dominated was, I don't want to say cheap, but he would have most definitely lost that fight. But I'm a huge Rozenstruik guy. I love him, man. People don't realize how good he was as a kickboxer. He was special. So do you think that Rozenstruik gets back on track here off the loss to Ngannou? Or does the old man have a couple wins left in the tank? How do you see it?
Yeah, it just depends what kind of Rozenstruik comes out. The guy's obviously got the death touch. If he puts hands on you, he's got the capability of absolutely just laying you to waste. But when guys have the death touch, they start to find into a tendency of relying on the death touch, and they just won't throw enough punches because that one punch is going to land. You got to set your punches up. You got to throw kicks. You got to throw combinations. You got to cut angles. You got to set traps. And then the punch lands, and that's the one that you're trying to do. That's my issue with him, is that he knocked out so many lower-level guys, just hitting them with the first punch and then topple over, that when he took on Alistair Overeem, just no sense of urgency whatsoever. He allowed the first 3 rounds to just fly away. And then the 4th round, he brings it on a little bit. I actually thought he won the 4th round. And then going into the 5th round, it's like, okay, man, you're probably down 3-1. You need a finish here. He leaves it until what? The last 5 seconds. And mind you, it was still an early stoppage. Did he blow up his lip? Yes. But the second Overeem hits the ground, he popped right back up. He's wobbled. He's discombobulated. There's 5 seconds left on the clock. This is a 3-round fight. He won't even be able to get a late 5th round stoppage. He needs to turn it up. He needs to turn it up right away. And I just don't know that we're going to get that from him. And similar to guys that have spent so much time being the guy that knocks somebody out, how do you come back from your first loss? How do you come back from now being absolutely knocked out yourself? Does it make him hesitant? Does he want to just go and get in a firefight knowing he just got knocked out? These are all things you don't know. Even Francis Ngannou, if you look at his fight with Derek Lewis, coming off the Stipe fight, it mentally messed him up. He just didn't want to throw his hands. He just stood there and looked at Derek Lewis for 3 rounds and just didn't want to let his hands go, and then apologizes afterwards, corrects that, and now looks unbeatable again. Looks like he never skipped a beat. But there was that mental hurdle of coming off that loss. How do you change? How do you change your game plan? Who are you as a fighter? Rozenstruik, the best game plan here is go at JDS and go at him quick and try to put this guy away. Yeah, as you mentioned, he has been knocked out. Maybe that's the path to victory. But JDS, I mean, his losses 2 to Cain Velasquez, who is in the argument for one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Alistair Overeem, former K1 kickboxing world champion, who is certainly one of the greatest heavyweight strikers and most fearful KO artists of all time in the heavyweight division. Stipe Miocic, the current champion, who he also has a win over, who's just, got a tremendous amount of power. Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blades, the number 2 and 3 challengers currently. It's absolutely the best guys going. Whereas Rozenstruik's been beating the Alan Crowders and Junior Albinis of the world. Is that as impressive? Certainly not. Does he have power? Yes. Can we bet a guy just on the basis of he has power? I don't know. And again, Alistair Overeem and Andrei Arlovsky, his 2 notable KO victories, both of those guys have been knocked out a dozen times each. They're both in the record books for most KO losses on a fighter currently active on the roster. So, yeah, I think he could knock out JDS, but this is heavyweight fighting. Anybody can knock out each other. I think JDS is faster. He's got more output. You nailed it huge when you said he's in the shape of his life. Buddy, who at 36 suddenly just looks like that? He is in phenomenal shape. And above crazy. All that else, the one last thing I want to throw in there as well is Overeem versus Rozenstruik. In the first round, Overeem takes down Rozenstruik, and it turns out Rozenstruik has no ground game, no ability to get back up, no takedown defense. Overeem should have just kept doing that. In the second round going forward, Overeem realizes he's tiring a little bit. His wrestling's not very good. He's more of like a football tackle kind of guy, and he knew it was 5 rounds. So he didn't want to just go and wrestle for 3 rounds, gas himself, and get caught late. He tried to conserve himself as well. JDS does. How often does he go to his wrestling? Hardly ever, because you know him as a boxer, you know him as a striker, but he's not a dummy. And Rozenstruik has also spent a lot of time at American Top Team, and JDS is at American Top Team. And because JDS has been there a lot longer, their loyalties to him, the main crew of guys have kind of worked with JDS, and Rozenstruik's gone to his strength and conditioning coach in Florida, and he's doing his work there. So no doubt that his training partners and all these guys that have a good familiarity with Rozenstruik would tell him to take the guy down. Like, box him up. Like you said, great in the pocket boxing. Always has been. Get in the pocket, box him up, and as he's going to counter, before he gets a chance to counter, go on his hips. Close him up. Close that distance. Way harder. You think the guy's got big power? You should see his power when he's on his back. It's non-existent, because that's how you neutralize power. Get the guy down or get him up against the cage so he can't generate distance, But JDS fights a good game plan. He's got all the skills to win this fight, and he's a current underdog. So I have to have a look at old Sagano one more shot.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a ton of great points, man. And I just got to believe that Rozenstruik is just going to find that spark he had as a kickboxer that he has not really shown in the UFC yet. And you bring up a great point. Now, we know that JDS, not one to take somebody down, but if he does decide that that's my path to victory, Rozenstruik could be in trouble, because you're right, man. He looked like a fish out of water on his back against Alistair Overeem. So I think all those are really solid and valid points. Co-main event, Sean O'Malley, Chito Vera. Man, the UFC must really believe in this kid, Cody. 3rd time he will fight in about 5 months. And for Dana White to give this kid a co-main in a pay-per-view tells us all you need to know about what he thinks about him. Sean O'Malley, one of the few fighters, I think, that you watch in the cage where there is just something different about him. He looks special. Early on, when you would watch Conor, like at Cage Warriors or his first couple fights in the UFC, you could just tell that there was something different about him. And I get that same vibe from Sean O'Malley. Striking is elite for somebody that is that young. His use of range is absolutely fantastic. And he has deceiving power for that body frame. But he finally takes on a game opponent, I think, in Marlon Vera. Certainly, I would say a step up in class at the very least. Vera, we know, comes in off that Song Yadong loss. But I thought that fight was really close, and you could have easily given that to Chito Vera, in my opinion. So what do you think about this matchup? Can Vera hang with O'Malley here, or does Sugar Sean just run through him?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the UFC must have a lot of faith in this kid because he was due for a step up in competition. This is a logical step up in competition. I like it from that perspective. But on the other side of it, you're trying to build O'Malley. You're trying to have this aura of invincibility in the marketing. And he's only 25 and he's getting better. And look at the KO reel. Look at the highlights. Vera is not the kind of guy that you build a highlight reel against. He's a tough fight every time out. It's very difficult to look good against him. It's very difficult to put on a sexy, appealing performance. If this is a nip-tuck war that O'Malley wins a decision in, coming out of it, his stock should definitely rise. I would say 100%. I want to see him get rounds in. But for the casual viewer that just, you should see the kicks and you should see that, they'll say, he wasn't as good as I thought, right? It's building a guy up. And O'Malley, they've given him very kind of soft competition, so to speak, and he's looked fantastic. Eddie Wineland's not soft competition, former WEC champ, tough guy, good striker, good veteran, but he's at the stage of his career where he would be considered soft competition. So O'Malley really needs that step up, and now he's getting someone in Chito Vera. And here's the problem with Chito Vera is that he's fought a lot of high-level guys and he's always in the fight. His problem is he's just such a slow starter. He just gives up the first round almost every time. Then he has to rally on coming back in 2 and 3 to win the decision. Oftentimes, if he wins just one of those rounds, he loses the decision. The Song Yadong fight's a great example. I mean, it's a very close fight. MMADecisions.com talks to 20 media members. It's split. It's 50-50, and the fight is a split decision. It's a close fight. But he gets outstruck in that fight. He has a lot of spots to get hit in that fight. And Song Yadong is 5'8" with a 67-inch reach. So he's also a pocket fighter. And they have a good exchanges in the pocket. O'Malley, meanwhile, is 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. He's just so tall and rangy, and that he stays on the outside. He's just going to be able to chop away at him. A lot of people make the argument, it's at the apex. It's a small cage. O'Malley's going to have to fight. O'Malley weighs 135 pounds, man. Small cage, big cage don't make a difference with small guys. It's the heavyweights like JDS and Rozenstruik where small cage, big cage makes a difference. And also O'Malley's fought in the apex many of times. He beat Eddie Wineland at the apex. He also won the contender series against Oliver Kazakian once upon a time at the apex. So he's familiar with the setting. He's familiar with the cage. And he's familiar with moving in that setting. So he should be okay there. I think the smart play here is if you like Sean O'Malley, you don't want to pay that kind of price tag, you take Sean O'Malley by decision. If you like Chito Vera, he's a great price tag straight up. Just take Chito Vera straight up. If you're uncertain on it, you take the over on this fight. The fight to go to the distance was -120. It was near even money. The reason why I think this one's looking to go to the distance is O'Malley's built a reputation on just sparking these guys early in the first round. He's a big favorite here, 350. People think he's going to win. Then people are going to assume he's going to spark these guys in the first round. Marlon Vera does not get knocked out. To that effect, Song Yadong hit him with 100 significant strikes. He never looked wobbled. The guy went the distance with Douglas D'Andrade, KO master. The guy went the distance with John Lineker, who's absolutely power personified. Every single loss in Chito Vera's career has been by decision. He's only 27 years old. He's not shop-worn. He's extremely motivated. O'Malley is a KO fighter. O'Malley's got some submissions. I don't see him putting away Chito Vera. So if he wins this fight, and he could, manages the distance, lands the better punches, a little flashier, judges prefer that, gets the decision, maybe it's 29-28, maybe it's 30-27. Don't think he gets the finish. So I'm looking to improve that -300 price tag, the 3-1 price tag, by either taking O'Malley by decision. If I don't like it, just take the fight to go to the decision. I think that would be a decent look anyway.
Do you know the price on O'Malley by decision?
I'll look at it right now. I remember last night it was fight to go the distance is 120, and O'Malley by decision is Sean O'Malley by decision is -190. So that's not great. Never mind. It's +158. Yeah. So O'Malley wins by decision +158. So you're getting plus money there. Fight goes to decision is -110. So it's near money there. And why I wouldn't just say, Cody, you just told me fight goes the distance. Why not take Marlon Vera? If I like Vera, why not take Vera by? You're already getting 240 on Vera. So here's something really key with Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley knocks out Quinones in the first round. He looks like $1 million. He knocks out Eddie Wineland in the first round. He looks like $1 million. He knocks out Kazakian in the first round. He looks like $1 million. Where did he not look good? Was when he didn't get the first round finish. Andre Sukumatath takes him into the second and third round, and all of a sudden O'Malley breaks his foot and he's lying on the ground, and all Sukumatath needs to do is stand up to win the fight, but he doesn't. But you saw O'Malley, that flashiness, that aggression, that power, it didn't translate to the later rounds. Vera's so cast iron, he'll take you to the later rounds, and he shines in the later rounds. So if I am backing Vera to get the win, I'm not taking Vera by decision because maybe he gets a third round submission. Maybe he just pours it on. Maybe O'Malley wasn't everything we thought he was because we only saw him for 3 minutes of fight against low-end competition. A lot of unknowns for O'Malley. That's why you don't hit him at a price tag like that. You get him, you take him by decision because that's plus money. It's much better. And you take the fight to go to decision, it's minus 110. It's good. If you're a Marlon Vera better, you're getting plus 240 anyhow. So just take that as the bet. My bet personally would be O'Malley by decision, fight goes decision. He's got some stuff to prove still. Again, this is a card that has a lot of good-looking prospects, but good-looking prospects who they need fight time. They need experience. I'm glad the UFC is not giving this guy a title shot, but if he beats Marlon Vera in spectacular fashion, they'll push him towards something too big too soon. That's what I don't want to see from him. I just want to see this kid continue to grow. He's only 25. Seems to be getting better. But when you have a big mouth and you have a big, colorful character and you have a nice highlight reel and you're a fan favorite, they don't want to pay you a ton of money to fight nobodies. They're going to push you along really quickly. So it's sky's the limit for Sean O'Malley, but he's got to prove something come Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting look to take a minus $3 favorite and turn him into a plus 160 dog. I mean, all you're asking Chito Vera to do at that point is survive. And like you said, if he's done anything in the fights that he's lost, it's survive. So I like it. All right, main event, man. We've all been waiting for it. DC, Stipe 3. Should be Daniel Cormier's last fight. I truly believe this fight will probably define both legacies. If Stipe wins, he is undoubtedly the greatest heavyweight of all time, without question. If Cormier wins, God, man, I mean, this would put him at the very least in the conversation of the greatest sports combat athlete of all time, right? We know DC takes the first fight. In the second fight, Cormier went into that fourth round, I believe, probably up 3 rounds to none. At the very worst, 2 rounds to 1. So before, Miocic made the adjustment in round 4 to start ripping that body, and then that changed everything. So they're in a smaller cage now. If I'm Cormier's corner, I'm telling him, listen, man, you got to use that Olympic wrestling much more in this fight than the first 2. He has proven that he can hang on the feet with Stipe, right? But I believe that Cormier has that extra avenue to win the fight. Stipe has taken every opponent that he's ever faced down to the mat except Daniel Cormier, and that's not by accident. So I really do think the fight defines 2 legacies. I have not decided yet. I've watched both fights 5 times this week. I'm still undecided. How do you see it, Cody?
Yeah, I'm going back and forth this one as well. When you watch both fights, especially, Daniel Cormier proves undeniably he's the better fighter. Up until all of a sudden he tires out and he's not. The first fight, he knocks him out in the first round. He's proven to be the better man. He's landing good punches in that fight. He obviously knocks him out in the clinch. Happens quick enough. Daniel Cormier is a superior fighter. Now you get the second go around. He's already won the first round. Now we're getting the second, third, and fourth round, which he wins all of those. Now they're going into the official 5th round because it's 2 fights split up. Obviously, 4th round of the second meeting. And that's when he's just a little too tired. And Stipe starts to put it on him. There's just so many things to consider coming into this fight. I mean, when you watch, you mentioned you watched the second fight 5 times. The whole first 3 rounds, Daniel Cormier's arms up, outreach, trying to control the wrist, punch over the top. The body punch is there the entire time. And yet Stipe does not hit the body one single time prior to the 4th round where he hits it 16 times. So if he comes into this fight and he's ripping the body right from the get-go, does maybe he tire out Cormier a little quicker? Does maybe he take a little bit of wind out of his sails a little earlier? Who knows? And the other thing is going back to that second fight. He takes down Stipe in the first round, Cormier does, and then, Stipe can't get back up. Cormier does an excellent job of positioning, holding him down. That ground and pound at the end of the first round, Stipe looks like he's going half stiff. Nasty hammer fist. Round ends. Why didn't Cormier go back to the wrestling? And now coming to the Trilogy fight.
Wasn't that he went into that second fight just off the back surgery also, right? Now he's not dealing with that. You have to think that his frame is stronger in this third fight, and it will probably be even easier for him to take Stipe down, no?
Yeah, and that's certainly his logic. When you talk to him or you see interviews on him, he's playing this narrative of, oh, last time I couldn't wrestle, my back hurt. This time, oh, I'm going to wrestle him so good. And the small cage, oh, single legs all day, baby. Single leg, single leg, single leg. That is probably the best game plan to do. No doubt about it. One thing is, wrestling is increasingly exhausting, man. The more you wrestle in these fights, the tired you get. Bantamweights, they can wrestle all day. Featherweights, they can wrestle a lot of the time. The higher up in weight class you go, wrestling heavy game plans don't really exist. That's why a Khabib at 155 pounds is a rarity. That's why a Kamenev at 170 pounds is a rarity. Once you get up to 205, why is there nobody doing that? Why is there nobody at heavyweight that just takes guys down and dominates them the entire time? That's why Cain Velasquez built his reputation of being so good, because he was a guy that was able to do it for a little bit. Then his body just fell apart. Cormier in the second fight, he gets down Stipe in the first round. He controls him well in the first round. Now go to the second round. He looks tired, but he catches a second win. And the second win revolves around him striking. He strikes in rounds 2. He strikes in rounds 3. In rounds 4, he's just too tired. But he abandons the wrestling game plan. He'll tell you it's because his back hurt. But I almost get the impression that he didn't want to exert himself too much. If he just keeps going after these takedowns and Stipe starts stuffing a couple of them, he's going to get tired. If he gets tired, his hands are going to drop. If his hands going to drop, he's going to start getting hit. It's all just part of it. Daniel Cormier at 36 years old is probably in a non-competitive fight with Stipe. He just kills him. But Daniel Cormier, the realistic situation here is that he's 41 years old. He hasn't fought in a year. He hasn't fought since he took a bad drubbing against Stipe where he took a lot of bit of damage. All the interviews with him, and punch drunk is not the word. He seems tired. He seems exhausted. He seems like this long run. He's been wrestling his entire life. He's been training his entire life. He's been competing his entire life. It finally seems like he's relieved that this is my last fight, my legacy, and then I'm going to ride into the sunset. And guys that announce their retirements prior to fighting never win. They don't. You've already got your mind set on something else. His mind is set on something else. Then you factor in his number one teammate, not training partner, but teammate, one of the captains at his gym, Khabib Nurmagomedov, not there, right? Him and his entire cast of badass Russians stayed in Russia, did not come down. So DC's not training with those guys. Then he's got a pregnant wife. His third child's on the way. He's been very worried about, COVID and taking it home. He's training with a small group of guys. He's worried about his wife. Then his father, his mentor, his role model, the guy that instilled all this great character into his life, recently passed away. I just don't know that he's the best DC that he's been. And he's going to need to be a pretty damn good version of himself to pull off this win. As we talked about earlier in the show, live bet situations. This is an incredibly good live bet situation because DC probably wins the first 2 rounds again. He does. He's faster. His hand speed is much faster than Stipe's. He throws a little more. He's good in the pocket. He's good on the outside. Stipe doesn't fight particularly well with his range. He's got the wrestling ability. His cardio is going to check out for at least 10 minutes. He'll start well. Then you can get a better read. Is he wrestling entirely? Does he just take him down round one, take him down round 2? Oh, he looks good. Oh, he looks good. Or do you start to see, oh, geez, he's working a little too much. Oh, this fight's getting sloppy. Oh, he's getting hit to the body. But if he's up 2 rounds, you're going to get a big plus money dog tag on Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic is very capable of doing the same thing he did in the last fight. Get this fight to rounds 4, get this fight to round 5, and put it on him. So I'm looking at it from a live betting perspective that I want to keep my eye on if Cormier wins the opening rounds, but Stipe's still there. Because Cormier could knock him out quick. He knocked him out in the first round quick. The second round, he nailed him with some shots. But Stipe took it. I want to watch a round and a half live and see, is Stipe taking it? Does DC not quite look as good? And hit it from a live bet. But as far as my pre-fight bet goes, I'm going to go with Stipe Miocic, my Croatian brethren, to pull it off again. And then the last thing, if you just want to look at historically, younger in trilogy matches, the younger fighter who won the second fight typically wins. You know, it was pretty crazy that Daniel Cormier, the light heavyweight champion, nearing his 40s, jumps up a weight class, no expectations, and he knocks out Stipe Miocic. That's legendary. Then they say, well, run it back because Stipe was the champ for so long, and he's a big name. Run it back. You know what he says? Yeah, I think I'm going to fight Brock Lesnar instead. I think I'm going to fight Brock Lesnar. Doesn't want to fight Stipe.
Yeah.
Gets backed into the Stipe fight, and Stipe knocks him out. Now he's got 1 fight left. Got to fight Stipe again. I can't. Who else am I going to fight? Nobody else for me to fight. I don't want to retire on a loss. I'm going to take that legacy fight. I'm going to give him one more go. But this is not the fight he wanted. He wanted to end it with a Brock win, and that was it. You got talked in the Stipe fight, and he lost. Now we got to do the trilogy. He's not going to be a better version of him than the last time you saw him. He'll be regressed, back issues or not. He'll be regressed from the second fight. And if he's not as good as he was in the second fight, and that still wasn't good enough to win, I don't see him getting the victory here. So I'm going with Stipe Miocic. I'm very interested in potentially live betting him if he loses the first two, but looks like he's in it. He's slight dog right now, so I mean that's fine enough. And then as far as decision or knockout, you would think knockout. He's not submitting him. You would think knockout later. But that last fight, it was a late fourth-round stoppage. So if that fight gets out of the fourth round and then DC holds on to the fifth for whatever reason, like it could have gone to decision. Mm-hmm. Plus, the way they fought in that second fight, they're not going to fight like that again. They were mad brawling. That was a sweet fight, the second fight. Sweet fight. I don't see either man wanting to fight like that, especially DC, considering the amount of damage he took. And, he realizes he's got a young family. He realizes he's got a broadcasting career. He realizes he's got other opportunities. He realizes he's got a bank account. Why is he subjecting himself to this? Because of legacy. But just because you want something that bad doesn't mean you're going to get it. And I don't know if this fairy tale is going to have the happy ending.
Yeah, the one factor that you spoke about, and I tweeted out a couple days ago that nobody is mentioning is, the one thing that you have to admit in that second fight was Stipe took every single punch from Cormier and he wore it extremely well, right? So that has to make you think that DC hit the button pinpoint perfect with that right hand in the first fight. And what nobody talks about is Miocic comes into that fight when he had fought Ngannou 6 months earlier, I believe. And Ngannou, at the very least, gave him a concussion and dropped him, even though, he got back up and eventually won that fight. So, if that concussion plays into the reason why he was knocked out in the first fight and why he took everything extremely well in the second fight, you have to believe that chin holds up on Saturday night, right?
You know what? And I'm glad you make that point because I agree 100%. So Stipe, he had been hurt at points in his career, the Alistair Overeem fight, but Francis Ngannou concussed him. He's hurt. He looks out on his feet at one point. He took a big shot. It's like, oh man, now 6 months later, he takes on Daniel Cormier. And it's a short shot in the clinch, a little behind the ear, legal shot, and it just crumples him. Oh man, the mighty Stipe goes down. Now, best thing that can happen to him here is Cormier dodges him for the first bit and tries to fight Brock Lesnar. Otherwise, they rebooked that rematch a little too soon. And just like Cody Garbrandt fighting TJ Dillashaw the second time, you gotta let the chin rest. So him dodging and fighting and trying to fight Brock, it stalled time. Now Stipe got the rematch with Cormier 1 year after the first fight. And it was actually Cormier who made the point in the lead up saying, you know what? Him taking that year off is the best thing he could have done for his chin. And all of a sudden, Stipe can just take all these shots. Chin recovered. The year off, huge. You look at the date between this fight and the second fight, 363 days later, almost a year to the freaking day.
Yeah.
That chin will have been recovered. And this is a guy that doesn't train hard in the gym. Like he's not sparring massive heavyweights, small little gym in Ohio, mostly works with middleweights, light heavyweights, more mobile guys, part-time firefighter. Again, another family man. He's not out there grinding, getting beat up in the gym, getting hurt. I think he'll come in here as fresh as he can be, fresh enough to take those early punches. And as I mentioned, last time Daniel was just lighting it on him. Daniel Cormier had a world-class camp with world-class guys at a world-class level, and he was ready to go. And Stipe is just training in Ohio, partly in his garage. Come on. Now, 2020, it's a different world, my man. That elite level training with those elite level training partners and that you're a nutritionist and your strength and conditioning coach and all these different things in the state of California, mind you, no, that's not existing. He needs to kind of run his own thing now. Meanwhile, Ohio Stipe, he's done this entire his career. This is who he is. He knows how to prepare. He knows how to fight. He knows how to make on-the-fly adjustments. It's going to be okay here, I think. This favors him. The crazy quarantine pandemic world would favor Stipe Miocic the same way it favored Derek Lewis last week. Derek Lewis always trains like there's a pandemic going on. So it wouldn't have affected him. If anything, it allowed him to get in better shape, and he looked in better shape. I think Stipe shows up. Again, he's not young himself. I think he's 36 years old. But he's going to show up as good of a version as he was the last time. You're not going to get a regressed version. I get a feeling that Daniel Cormier, the difference between 40 and 41 and 41 and 42 and 43 and 4, it's astronomical. That's when a prime level athlete really starts dropping off. You can get away with a little bit of heavyweight, but he's just a very small heavyweight taking on a very large man. The damage is going to accumulate. It did in the first fight. Sorry, it did in the second fight, and I think it will again here. So that's the official pick would be Stipe Miocic.
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm having such a hard time going back and forth on this fight is because if you take into consideration the fact that Stipe's chin had the time to heal, that's why he doesn't go down in the second fight, and he went down so easily in the first fight. So I think if you add his chin is better with the fact that he's not going to wait until round 4 to start hitting that soft body, it leads me to think that if the fight stays on the feet, Stipe finally has the edge on the feet, where it didn't look like he did in the first fight or the first 3 rounds of the second fight. On the flip side, if Daniel Cormier uses that small cage to his advantage and says, you know what, I'm chaining takedowns and I'm putting this guy's back on the mat every round, then the fight could easily swing into his favor also. That's why I am so torn on who wins the fight. But I want to ask you about the total, because I really do think we see the third round in this fight. I'm actually pretty confident that we see the third round. I think that first round was a fluke in the first fight because he hit the button perfect, and Ngannou fight 6 months before that, right? So it leads me to think that the fight probably goes over 2.5 rounds. Now, on FanDuel, you can get fight starts round 3 at -160. I think I think there's probably a little value in that line, because I really do think that we're going to see 10 minutes. I don't think Stipe's putting Cormier down in 10 minutes. And my gut tells me that Cormier is going to try his best to get him on the mat in the first couple rounds. So I feel pretty confident that we see round 3. What's your thoughts on the total?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of people that are thinking, well, Cormier knocked him out once in that under, and the last time he almost knocked him out would have been the under, but he's not looking to do that anymore. He's looking, as you mentioned, to wrestle. His own interviews, he's very unapologetic. Listen, I'm sorry, guys. This might not be the most entertaining fight in the world, but this is my legacy. I want to win this. I want to win this fight, sail off in the sunset without taking any damage. I don't want to stand and have a fight of the night performance again. I want to get the win. I'm going to wrestle this guy. I'm going to wrestle this guy. I'm going to wrestle this guy. If he's looking to just wrestle, you're getting around 3. If he just looks to wrestle and he tires himself out and he gets finished as he's too tired, Stipe takes him to deep waters, you're still getting after round 3. Because, yeah, right. Stipe put it on Cormier bad that second fight, but it still took 20 minutes of damage before he finally succumbed to it. And this will be no different. And also in the second fight, the first round, Cormier doesn't take a whole lot of damage. In rounds 2 and 3 and 4, because he's electing to stand up that entire time, he's taking lots of damage. And now the damage is just too much later in the fight. If he wrestles the first 3 rounds, he takes no damage in the first 3 rounds. And then rounds 4, Stipe's working his body. Well, it might not have as much as effect because it's not an accumulation of 15 minutes of war. It's only, he's only been getting beat up for 5 minutes. Maybe his body sustains. I like the over, though. I like what you're saying. Because I'm taking Stipe, and I think Stipe's path to victory is get him in the later rounds, I got to go into 3 anyways. If for whatever reason I'm wrong about this, Cormier does use that little cage. He does utilize his wrestling advantages. He does neutralize Stipe and just take him down and dominate him. It still hits that over. So that's kind of your way of getting out. Either guy wins. The over still kind of favors what they're looking to do in the spot. So over 3 rounds looks good.
Yeah, man. The more I think about this fight, I really believe that's the angle. Either you do what you said and you live bet looking to take Miocic late, or you bet that the fight starts round 3. I think those are the 2 best ways to approach the fight, probably. All right, well, Cody, I really appreciate you coming on, man. I'm a fan. I definitely want to do this again. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you have going on.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me the time today and shooting some fights with me. But you can definitely find me on Twitter at CJ Saftic. Love talking fights. Obviously doing the show Dogger Pass podcast, and you can catch my work at the Fight Network as well. Working with a lot of great outlets and great people that keep me busy anyway. So again, thank you for the time today. And yeah, man, if you want to do this anytime, I had a great time talking fights with you. It's been a long time coming, and yeah, hopefully we make it a profitable weekend and we keep the train rolling in the future.
We will definitely do this again, man. There's nothing better than talking fights with somebody that actually knows what's going on. I'll tell you. A lot of people think they know what's going on, man, but it's really great to talk to people that really know the fight game. So I appreciate you. We will definitely do this again for sure. And that's it, boys. We'll see you Saturday night for the Fight Cast. As always, join the movement. Run pure.